Hello, hello, welcome back to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you very much to my generous Patreons and channel members. You are the reason why this content remains likely. Not guaranteed, but, likely. It's a thing that might happen. Maybe. Of course, I have been uploading quite frequently. I really actually alarming myself how much extra time I have to just read. Not that I'm not enjoying myself, it's just one of those things where I'm like, man, I don't do a lot. I should go outside. Maybe go for a walk. But here I am, again, doing more content just for you. You special people, I think. You're great. How about that? You're all great. Great people. And today, we are going to discuss a individual who is notable only because he got really drunk twice. This is the story of Thomas Edward Fitzpatrick. Let's do this. Thomas was born April 24th, 1930 in America. His early life was relatively uneventful. However, when World War II broke out, he was one of many young men to enlist, although he was only 15 at the time. He was only able to join the Marine Corps because he lied about his age. This wasn't super unusual. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, we in America took that, well, personally, as would be expected, and a lot of enlistees did not actually meet the age criteria for the military, but a lot did lie about it just to join in the fight. So Thomas was one of many to do this, although what exactly he did in the Marine Corps remains a bit of a mystery. It's unclear where he was stationed or what he was involved in, but we do know he was there. He would be discharged 2 years after the war ended, but during that time he actually learned to fly a reconnaissance plane. This is where it's likely he got his fixation on aeronautics. After he was discharged from the Marines, he actually then enlisted immediately into the Army. Apparently he hadn't had enough. I'm not judging, I'm just kind of surprised. And was stationed in Japan. He was actually scheduled to return home right before the Korean War broke out. Now, the Korean War is actually often glossed over by a lot of historians because it was kind of sandwiched between two more major conflicts, World War II and the Vietnam War. Some even refer to the Korean War as the Korean conflict, as if an effort to sell it short was really necessary. And I don't think that's really fair. It was a pretty violent war, and whether you believe that the United States should have been involved at all, after all it was a foreign issue, you have to remember that it was the Cold War, and the Soviet Union was backing North Korea while we backed South Korea. So it wasn't like they weren't a part of it either. It was just one of those things, politics. That's not what this video is about. Thomas was actually wounded during the war. He was driving an ammunition truck trying to rescue some trapped American soldiers. He received a Purple Heart for this, and would be discharged not long after. After his stint with the military was over, he enrolled in flying school at the Teterboro School of Aeronautics and actually found work as an airplane mechanic. He enjoyed flying, even though he isn't known to have actually done it while he was with the military, beyond learning to fly that scout plane like I mentioned before. But I bet you're wondering, where does the drunkenness come in? Like, what does alcohol have to do with this story? It just sounds like a, veteran who liked to fly. Well, yes, but, well, here's the thing. On September 30th, 1956, Thomas was at a local tavern in Washington Heights, New York City. He made a bet with someone at the bar that he couldn't make it from Washington Heights to New Jersey and back again in 15 minutes. Apparently, Thomas is a bit like me, where if someone tells you that you can't do something, you go completely out of your way to make sure it absolutely occurs. And believe me, that energy only gets amplified if you've had way too much to drink. I've been there too. It's actually really a problem. And actually, if you're the type of person that drinks way too much, please seek some help. It's actually really bad for you. But Thomas did not have someone there to help him be responsible that night. No. So at around 3 a.m., he decided to take that bet, drive all the way to New Jersey, specifically the Teterboro School of Aeronautics that he was enrolled at, and borrowed one of their aircraft. Specifically a Cessna 140. We just got done talking about Cessna before, although that incident involved the 150. The 140 was one of the predecessors to the 150, and it's very, very similar in appearance. They were pretty good planes, again, simple like the later 150s would be, but they had some old school design choices, just like a metal fuselage with fabric wings. They wouldn't be nearly as successful as the 150s later would be, but they were still pretty good on their own. Good enough that Thomas took one of these things, flew it into the sky, and proceeded to land it on the street right in front of the bar. The absolute madman. Mind you, he was drunk the whole time, and, you shouldn't drive drunk, and you really shouldn't fly drunk. This man, while intoxicated, flew a plane and landed it in a place that is in no way a reasonable landing strip. Washington Heights, even in the 50s, was a busy place. I mean, it was in the middle of the night, but still, they don't call it the city that never sleeps for nothing. But he landed a plane in the road. He wanted to land it in a nearby park, but it was too dark for him to actually see anything there. And since the street was illuminated, he just said, I'll just go with that. Which is a completely normal reaction to that situation, obviously. He couldn't have just not taken the plane in the first place. No. He had a bet to win. And that was way more important than endangering just everyone on the street that evening. But to his credit, he landed the plane perfectly, under conditions where that shouldn't have been possible. He proved himself to be an exceptional pilot in this regard, and even the police were said to be impressed. He was charged with grand larceny and for violating the city's administrative codes. Apparently they prohibited planes landing in the city streets, which, yeah, I'm in no way surprised by that. But apparently the owner of the plane was the most understanding person on the face of the earth, because they declined to press charges on the larceny bit. So he was only charged with the administrative code violation, and he was fined $100, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but taking inflation into account, that would have been about $1,000 in today's money. Which still, considering the situation here, wow, that is an alarming slap on the wrist, and you'd think he would just walk that off, thanking his lucky stars he wasn't thrown in jail, and just, have a great story to tell. No, this man does not back down from bets, especially when he's been drinking, and I really think he needed to take a chill pill on this, because 2 years later, he did it again! Apparently some dude in Connecticut didn't believe Thomas's story about landing a plane in Manhattan. So Thomas, well, he couldn't let that go. If this one dude on the whole planet, just one guy, doesn't believe that he did this, then, well, it was pointless. So apparently, they drove all the way back down to New Jersey, where he stole another plane. This time it was a Cessna 120, which were very similar to the 140s, but they were more of an economy version. The main difference between them and their 140 sisters were that they didn't have any wing flaps, and for a plane of this size, you didn't necessarily need that mechanic to fly safely. It was just kind of an added benefit if you wanted to pay the extra. But outside of that, they didn't have much else in the way of differences. In fact, a lot of pilots who saved money with the 120s opted for a bunch of optional stuff that made them nearly indistinguishable from the 140s, with the sole exception of the wing flaps. Either way, he stole that. Again. And then he flew it to Manhattan. Again. And he landed it on Amsterdam Avenue near 187th Street. Again. This time apparently the streets were actually busier and there were a lot of witnesses around. He almost hit a bus in the landing, but once again he stuck it down perfectly and nobody was hurt and the plane was undamaged. But this time, however, the authorities were having none of it. Once, okay. Nothing bad happened as a result, and the owner of the plane didn't press charges. We'll give you a little fine, don't do it again. He did it again. So now it's like, okay, no. It didn't help at this point that Thomas didn't even have a valid flying license. It was taken away from him after the first stunt. So when he did it again, he was also stealing a plane and flying it, landing at a place he wasn't supposed to, without a license. So he spent 6 months in prison over this second stunt, and he never did it again after that. But even in the media, most people just wanted to talk about what a skillful pilot he was. Like, this isn't normal. Landing a plane of any kind on a narrow street with people on it and not hitting anything is an incredibly difficult thing to do, especially while, drunk. So Thomas was an incredible pilot, and that isn't up for debate. The problem is, he was breaking the law, and he was endangering people by doing this. Cool as it may be, and ridiculous, but also highly dangerous. And you should probably be pretty thankful that all this happened in the 50s, because, real talk for a second, I'm not so sure that the residents of New York City or the authorities involved would be nearly as understanding of flying any kind of aircraft very low and landing it on a Manhattan street post 9/11. I feel like that might have shifted everyone's tolerance levels for this sort of thing. So, yeah, in case anyone watching this is getting any bright ideas, don't actually do that. Because I assure you, you will not get off nearly as easily. Just so we're clear, Thomas Fitzpatrick would live the rest of his life without note. He actually died of cancer in 2009, at the age of 79. He left behind his wife Helen, of 51 years, as well as 3 sons, Thomas Jr., Daniel, and Stephen. Rest in peace, you crazy drunk, but absolute legend. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.